This is the Mental Health Movement Podcast, Voice for the Voiceless, a weekly podcast hosted by Chris Nelson, a podcast to help break the stigma of mental health and to remind everyone that it is okay to be not okay, and to remind those that they are never alone. Please also note that Chris is not a psychologist or psychiatrist and is speaking from research and experiences. Trigger warning for those for the possible explicit content and language.
What's up, Warriors, and welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Movement Podcast, Voice for the Voiceless. I just want to give a quick shout out to my last two guests. Grayley and Derek were incredible guests. Today, we're going to be talking about Women's History Month. I know it's basically the end of March and kind of late on this podcast, but obviously, as you guys know, I had the two guests prior to this podcast, so it kind of worked out the way that it did. I just kind of wanted to name drop a couple women that had an impact on the mental health community. First of all, we had Mary Calkins. She was the first woman to be the president of the American Psychological Association. Then we had Jane Addams, who she won the Nobel Peace Prize for her work on settlement houses and for founding social work as a profession. And so many more women out there that just, have had a really big impact on this community as a whole. And, off the top of my head, I can think of, my therapist. She does wonderful work with not only myself, but any of her other clients. So, always grateful to bring her up. And today's guest, she is not only a fitness model, she is also a model, and she's one of my good friends. Ashley, thank you so much for being on today's podcast.
Yeah, Chris, I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm really glad we got this schedule figured out and we were able to record here and just have a nice conversation. I feel like anytime that you and I in the past have put aside any conversation, that we always have a good banter back and forth. So I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, the first question I had was, what made you want to get into to modeling?
So it's actually really funny because it was never really something I actively pursued. My photographer slash, I guess you want to call him my manager, he, Cato the one, he kept reaching out to me. It took him 4 years to finally get me to be like, okay, fine. And in between there, we all go through our own traumas and our own things. So there was also a lot going on after we had met. So he's just stuck through the entire time. And I was like, you know what? Let me just go ahead and give it a go and see what happens. And I enjoy it. It's fun. It's not something I would say I'd make a full career out of, but it's definitely taken me places that I would have never thought. Just if you just keep going and if you believe in yourself, it definitely opens doors for you. And as long as it's good for you and it's fun to you, I'd say just go for it and do it. You never know.
Yeah, I remember when we first started following each other and, just where you were at the start of your journey to where you are now. I mean, progress and just seeing how you are mentally, it's inspiring to see you do so much good and make so many positive changes in what I feel like is a short amount of time. But it's great that you have somebody like your manager who is as persistent as they were and wanted to work with you and work with your strengths. And I'm sure this comes with a mental toll on you, whatever challenges that you have had to face. What are some of the challenges that you've had to face in this line of interest?
So, I mean, as you can see, it's just I've kind of been on a little hiatus. On Instagram lately, but I'm still sharing what my photographer is putting out because we have a fashion show coming up in July, so we're just promoting that. But there's a lot of things. It's very hard as an adult. It's very hard to make friends, and I just feel like, especially in the field where you're working with a lot of women, it can be very hard sometimes to connect in a genuine way and have those genuine friendships. but it's also, it's very high demand. Just because someone else thinks you're good at it and you would do well in their field of vision that they may have for you, it doesn't mean it's necessarily good for you. So, I get a lot of people wanting to work with me, but they don't want to pay. And that's a challenge too, because it's like, I don't always want to do this stuff just for free, let's say. Like,
Sure.
There's got to be something, a part of it. Like, yes, it's fun to do it, of course. You meet a lot of cool people, you go a lot of different cool places, but a lot of people also see how great you are and they want that for themselves and they want to take the credit. So you just have to protect yourself. You just have to be smart about it, because there are a lot of people out there who claim to be professional. And as a woman, and as someone who is fit, it's just extremely hard to work with professional people.
Right. Yeah, I can relate to the working in a certain field and just not being able to connect with your own gender. Like for me, example, contributing to the mental health community the way that I have. I've had this conversation with my therapist many times, and she's like, there's not enough men in this field, and it's because of that stigma of men aren't supposed to talk about this, men aren't supposed to share their feelings and stuff. And when you finally do meet those guys, like some of them are on your level mentally, and then you run into those ones who are like, oh well, I'm just doing this for a paycheck kind of thing. Like when I first started getting into therapy, I didn't want to work with a male therapist because I don't know, I always feel like there's that silent judgment from guys when it comes to mental health stuff, because I have a circle of friends who, they're all about, sharing what's going on, because obviously the alarming rate of male suicide, and it's tough to work in specific communities with like-minded people that have the same goals as you do, that want to talk about the same subjects that you do.
Hmm. Absolutely.
And
It's like you said, it's hard for men, especially.
yeah, and I couldn't imagine in your line of work, just like you said, all the different people you meet, you don't know who's genuine and who's looking, I guess, to cut your feet from under you. Have you ever met somebody that, I guess, tried to sabotage what you're doing?
Um, no, I wouldn't say sabotage what I'm doing. You just get those big talkers, that come at you and say, "Hey, I'll give you this, pay you this to get your time for you to come out here and we'll collab, do a shoot, get some footage, do the, they have a good pitch." And I've learned, it's a learning curve. I'm not, a professional, say. So, I mean, I'm new. I still consider myself new because I'm always learning. So, I basically had to track this particular person down to pay me for what we agreed on. I went out there, we did the shoot, I invested money in gas. So it's just, people will waste your time and, for their own benefit. It gets really sticky. So it's just, you have to learn like who you can trust. And that's across the board, not just in this field, but as a woman in this field, there's a lot of male photographers. You just have to use your own discernment, like, very well. I mean, it's worked for me. Luckily, that's been the only bad experience in the last 3 years. Otherwise, I've met a lot of great people and it's been fun for me. I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's good that you haven't had that many negative experiences. I'm assuming your manager is there with you like every shoot, or how does that work? They just book it and you go, kind of thing?
He doesn't necessarily have to be there. No. There's certain things that, like, I've done a fundraiser with another friend of mine out on her farm because, she has a lot of land out there. So we do a lot of fundraiser slash modeling shoots out there, and like he'll come out there, because it's for everybody. But usually if someone wants to book me, they'll just reach out to him and I'll just go. But what's funny is I'm still trying to get to that point. Like I said, people want your time for free, and that's not always something you can do. So.
Right. So, my next question for you, this actually kind of digs more into the personal side of yourself. So, being a mom, what is the most important lesson that you try to teach your daughter in this stage of her life?
Well, okay, so she turns 12 this year, and she's actually like very, very intelligent. I feel like she understands a lot. I'm constantly trying to teach her how to deal with things, especially under pressure, but just in general, like how to deal with things. She's, I don't really sugarcoat anything with her, and I really don't hide anything. So she sees me on the days I struggle. She sees me on my good days. And regardless if it's a good day or a bad day, she still sees how I handle the day in itself. And I think that's important for her too. Oh, something didn't go mom's way today, but she's handling it. Oh, well, this happened today, but mom's handling it. Just I want that for her, because I didn't get that growing up. My parents didn't really teach me um, how to deal with people and how to manage emotions. I kind of had to learn that on my own, and that's a different story for another day. My mother was bipolar. I had to grow up around a lot of things that a child shouldn't have. So I really just try to teach her how to deal with her emotions, how to treat her friends, how to navigate, when someone's taking advantage of her. So just, I feel like those are the things we should be teaching our kids. Um, we didn't get that growing up. At least me, I didn't get that. So I just try to basically what I didn't get, and now that I have that wisdom, I just try to give that to her as well.
I always find it interesting the parents that are around our age group that either didn't have to experience what you or I had to experience with our parents, and how
Hmm.
they raise their kids, and the different lessons um, that everybody teaches their kids. And I've met people who I guess have the quote unquote ideal, like perfect family, right? And they have kids of their own. And you see them just basically, I don't want to say not equipping their kids with, today's crazy society. The day that I have kids, I know there's so many different things that I know what not to do, because I had a rough childhood with my parents, my mom being a narcissist and my dad just being emotionally numb. Um, it's refreshing to always hear somebody like yourself, just be open and honest with your kids about what they're going through and not hide their emotions. Like, of course, I'm sure there's days where you try to be stronger than you, I guess, need to be around her just so she doesn't see you crumble. But at the
Oh,
same
definitely.
time,
Yeah.
yeah, and at the same time, you want her to know that it's okay to feel this way sometimes, and you just got to push through everything. Uh, you know, Meanwhile, while we were growing up, we didn't have 90% of these resources that we have now. Therapy was frowned upon. Depression was a bad word. You know, and just all the alarming like suicide rates or just overdoses, whatever it is. Now, I feel like it's starting to open a lot of parents' eyes of like, oh shit, maybe I should start uh, teaching my kid about the do's and don'ts of life. And
Hmm.
I feel the most important part of being a parent. I mean, obviously, I'm not a parent yet, but I feel the most important part of being a parent is to let your kid know that they're not alone in what they're feeling, that it's normal to feel the emotions that they're feeling.
Yeah, definitely. Because that's what we're supposed to do as their parents. You're supposed to teach them those things. You're supposed to role model those things. And when you're basically raised to figure that out for yourself, because my mother did not know how to manage herself. Like, even when she was having a bad day, there's a difference to me between a bad day and a really bad day. There are, like you just said, there are certain times where I do have to be stronger than I usually would be, because your children don't need to see you when you're more down than usual, like a little cry, oh, I'm just having a day, that's fine. But like when you really need that moment, like it needs to be by yourself.
Right.
And my mom never did that. She was always out in the open doing crazy shit. She didn't care. So it's just one of those things. Like I just want her to, it's not gonna be perfect, and I know that, but I just want her to be as emotionally healthy as possible.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm the only person doing it, but I'm willing, and it's just been her and I this whole time. So it'll work out. I know it will. So I just got to keep doing the work.
Yeah. And I feel emotional intelligence goes a long way with so many people, especially kids, because I feel when I was struggling as a teenager for as long as I did, I mean, shit, I didn't start seeking therapy till I was like, I want to say 26, 27 is when I actually finally started going to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Just thinking of how different my life could have been if I had a parent that gave a shit enough to, like, hey, maybe therapy will help you with all these feelings that you're feeling and not have to use my emotions against me. And that was one of the hardest things I have ever had to deal with was, having a mom who would use whatever emotions I was feeling against me. And I couldn't ever tell her anything. And I had to internalize so much anger and so much depression. And I hated myself because of it. And
Mm-hmm.
seeing
Yeah.
all that unravel now, being almost 31 years old, it's crazy how many different layers of yourself that you can peel back when you start therapy.
Yeah. Yeah. Even just having your own experiences and going through big life things, that also opens that kind of like, oh, that aha moment, that because
Right.
sometimes that's what you need that moment to just so you can start digging into yourself and learning, okay, why am I like this, why am I attracted to this, and how did it get me here? And it makes so much sense as you go, and it's like I could talk so much about it.
Right. And I wish more people went to therapy because I feel like communication in society as a whole would be so much better. Obviously, in every podcast, I try to say that therapy is not for everybody because it absolutely isn't for everybody. But the benefits of therapy are just, it's right there. It very cut and clear of how beneficial therapy can be for yourself, and therapy doesn't always have to be with a therapist. You can have that best friend that you can find in and they help you through stuff, and that works for some people. um I had a
Yeah.
friend who, me and him were friends, I think, for about 20 years before we stopped talking. um and he was solely against therapy, and would always just kind of I guess talk shit about me because of me going to therapy. He's like, oh, what is a therapist going to say that I won't be able to tell you yourself? Or like, he would just always be like overly negative about it. And then he got in trouble with the law. And basically, because of his anger issues, he was forced to go into therapy. Um, and funny thing is, when he started going to therapy, he's a lot better with communicating and talking about stuff. And it's just like, it's amazing to me, the doubters in this community, when they finally have the opportunity to heal and and be able to, I guess, show how much they're capable of when that therapist is able to peel back all that stubborn skin that person's wearing,
Hmm. Yeah.
and essentially pulling that mask off of their face.
Yeah, and I think that's something back then, like our parents weren't willing to show us. And I don't even think their parents were able to teach them. So it's just like that whole thing you hear about breaking the generational cycle. It
Yeah.
starts with us, and I feel like that's where you take the lead, and that's where I take the lead, and we use it and we make the good out of it.
Absolutely. So, as a woman, what stigmas do you feel that you face in the mental health community, if any? I know, and the reason I ask this, I think I should have probably left off the if anything, because obviously we all still face that stigma one way or another. Um,
Yeah.
but I think the reason I put if any on that question was my intention was just kind of I know there's so many women in this field, and I feel there's a lot of topics that are covered, and maybe there's just stuff that are underlying that nobody talks about still. So I'm curious to hear from yourself what stigmas yourself faces in this community.
Just like in general, or like in like the modeling field, or
A little bit of
just
both.
generally? Okay, because I mean, really, I haven't. I just feel like if you're looked at as a model, it's like, oh, you're not supposed to be sad or depressed. You're a model, or um, we're just either that, or we're just overly emotional. We're always viewed as like, even even in a working field, you are still looked at and classified as not emotionally stable, because we carry so many emotions inside of us, and because it is such a sticky point and place to work at sometimes. Like, when you stick up for yourself, and when you voice things that bother you, or whatever the case may be, as a woman, when you say and do those things for yourself, it's it's very hard to always get people to hear you, if that makes sense. It just, we aren't ever really taken seriously, and we're not really heard in a way where we should be.
That's interesting. I would have never thought that in the modeling community, especially, I with body positivity and all that stuff that has been I guess making waves in the last couple of years, and people being less judgmental of each other. I mean, obviously you're going to have those thorns here and there, but it's it's kind of disheartening to hear that you guys aren't taken seriously sometimes because you're a model. I would think that it would be, oh well, she's confident enough to do that, and it's great that she's putting herself out there and trying to I guess use your strengths to live out your career or live out whatever passions you have in that. And I just that's frustrating to hear
I
you
wish
guys.
it was more people need to look at it like that, because that's exactly what I try to do and make it stand for. If you want to try something, it's definitely great, like, for my self-esteem. And we're always looked at as, oh, we're doing this for other people. We're
Right.
doing this for the male eye. Like, those are the biggest stigmas ever. And it's
Mhm.
like, no, you can do these things for yourself, and you can do these things to uplift yourself. Like, this can totally be something that could be for you. And that's what
Right.
a lot of people don't understand. This is for us, not you.
And do you deal with a lot of that in like the fitness model part of that as well? Like I don't know if they're like hand in hand with each other, or if they're just like two different entities in what you do.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah. So is that like within the fitness community as well? Like you're just kind of looked at like uh you're doing this for yourself and not for others kind of thing?
Some people look at it that way and other people don't. I look at it that way. Like, this is for me.
Right.
Um, but you always get those people that they look at it differently, they judge differently. But again, I think that stems more from something that they face. That stems from a them issue, and
Right.
that's where it goes even deeper into mental health, because to each there's an action, or why someone says something or does something that they do. It's always within themselves as to why they do or say that.
Right.
So really, you just got to know that within yourself. Like, no, I do this for me. This makes me feel confident. This makes me feel good. I enjoy it. You meet a lot of women that are a girl's girl, that are on board with you, and it's just a very uplifting thing to be a part of.
Yeah. No, it's always great to see the different accomplishments that that I see you post up sometimes, and just seeing all the the growth and the mental and physical strength accomplishments that you're able to I guess share with the world. So I think it's really cool to see that you stay consistent with it. Um, so
Yeah.
before,
Um,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say it just comes down to understanding. Like without that, there's really you're just spinning your wheels. You're gonna be out here proving something that you shouldn't be. It's just
Right.
what it comes down to is just you have to try and understand the other person, why they may do it, and understanding their story. And I think that's how building connections with people works.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring that up because I've always found it interesting how the people that are judgmental, why they are the way that they are. And when you try to come from that place of understanding and trying to figure out why is this person the way that they are, and then when you finally start to, figure out why they are, it's just kind of you wish they were a little more grown up about their set opinions, or you wish they were a little better at communicating without insulting. Because I can't even begin to tell you how many times that I've had an opinion on something, and whether it was unpopular opinion or not, um, anything that I've contributed into the mental health community, it's just like, oh well, you shouldn't be having opinions like that because you're on this platform. You're not allowed to show anything other than caring and compassion because you're in the mental health community. And I've had this conversation with my therapist where it's just like, am I not allowed to show like any other trait but what I'm trying to dig into with the mental health community? Like, I'm not allowed to be upset. I'm not allowed to be angry about anything because of the status that I'm trying to accomplish in the mental health community. It's so frustrating to uh,
Hmm.
be among so many people that just don't want to communicate with you.
Yeah, and I think that's where people need to learn, that's where boundaries come into play. Okay, well, this person doesn't want to do the work to stay in my life, so you just got to cut them.
Right.
And it could be sad because you could really care about this person, and like you keep saying, I wish that they understood, and I think that's why we grieve so much, because it's like we love this person so much, and we wish they were like how we were, or how whatever we wish they were more of that they lack. It's just something that at the end of the day, they got to want to help themselves.
If there was one thing that I wish that we were taught as a kid, or teenagers, or young adult, whatever, it's how to grieve. And the misconception with grief is, always it's just loss, like it's just like a physical loss. And people don't realize that grieving looks like losing a friendship, or cutting ties with a family member, or losing out on a
Hmm.
relationship. And grief is probably the hardest emotion I've ever had to deal with, and I deal with it every single day, you know. And like you said, just grieving the thought of the person being out of your life, and not talking with that person every day, and you care about them, and it's tough. It's so tough, and I hate it so much.
Hmm. Yeah, it really is. But it's
Um,
just part of the process.
right. So before any of the fitness competitions that you take part in, what kind of preparations do you go through before those competitions?
So when you say preparations, like, what do you mean?
So I guess, do you have like a routine? Like, do you like meditate before, or like, is there like for like the week before or the competition or something, like is there like preparations that you go through? Like, do you change your workout at all? Like, how does that look like right before a competition? Like, do you give your body rest, or
Oh, okay. Yeah. So like because I've done CrossFit. I haven't really dabbled in bodybuilding. I do powerlifting now.
right?
So you have your peaking point, which is where you'll want to take like your opening numbers, and then you're going to deload. So like the week of, I'm basically just doing light stuff. If I want to go in and just use a sled on the turf and just walk with the sled, Otherwise, we don't do any kind of lifting prior to a big meet. That week is solely for just moving your body, but resting it. But like before I like go on and do my lifts, that morning I give myself a few hours to, I get up, I decompress a little, get my thoughts together. I basically, my heart and my mind got to be right before anything else. And if I'm feeling it, I'm always feeling it though. Like if you ask me to choose between my fitness or modeling, like I get that they can go hand in hand, but fitness is where it's at for me. Like it's like my daily medication, if you will. So it's just, I always know, like, okay, you got this. Just go out there and crush it. You got this. You can do this. I just give myself that pep talk, behind the scenes before I go out.
Yeah, and that positive self-talk goes such a long way, in any aspect of life. And I'm curious, I don't remember off the top of my head, what was your most recent accomplishment on the last competition you did? I think, was it like, what was your last lift?
Oh, my numbers on my lifts, you mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So squat, bench, and deadlift. You don't necessarily have to do all three lifts. If you just want a deadlift, you can do that. The same thing with the other two lifts, but I did all three. My squat, I did 242 pounds, and that was a 38-pound record just within a 3-4 month period, because I did a meet in December, and right. I did 204 on my squat. So that was a big accomplishment. And my bench was 143, and my squat, or my deadlift, was 304, and that was the best accomplishment. Like 304, like the main goal I've had forever, like for over a year and a half now. So, and the fact that it moved the way that it did, I'm super hyped about that. So I have another one coming in July, so we're just gonna keep climbing.
Oh yeah, what's your goal for the next lift? Or do you have like a certain number, or is it just kind of a see where you're at kind of thing?
So I'm only really like a stiffler when it comes to my squat and my deadlift. My bench, I honestly don't give a shit. Like I'm not really, everyone has their favorite lifts, and the bench just isn't my favorite lift. I think if in the future, maybe I would choose to leave that out of the competition. But I think this time I would love to go for like a 350 deadlift. That would be cool.
Did your daughter ever attend those meets?
So she's seen me compete in my CrossFit ones. Right. These last two powerlifting ones, she was not able to be there because, see, and this is the sad part, is like she had an event the same day. It was for her band with school. So my dad was able to go with her to that, but no, she hasn't been able to see me do any powerlifting ones yet. So hopefully the one in July she can.
Yeah. As it's always on weekends too, right?
Yep, it's always on a weekend. But she always sees me lift. Like she's always in the gym with me. She's been in the gym with me since she was 3. I mean, she's going to be 12 this year. So it's what she knows. She's grown up around it her whole life. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So to follow up on that question, what's your favorite part about competing? Is it the networking? Is it the different milestones that you reach on lifting, or what's your favorite part?
It's definitely, reaching a PR. That's the whole point of these meets. You go out there and people scream and, get it off. It's just, I live for that. It's such a cool environment. Like, lift the shit, pick it up, right. Do it. Like, hell yeah. Like, it's just a good support system. And it's like, that's my favorite part, is just the hype of it. The adrenaline rush, hitting PRs with your favorite people, doing what you love to do. Just, it's an overall good feeling, and it's a morale boost for everybody, because it's just so uplifting, and everyone's, giving you kudos. And it's just, even when you fail a lift, because it happens a lot. This last one, we actually bombed. A lot of us bombed on our bench, but everyone's still like, good lift, good lift. Like, it's just the kind of environment you would like to be around.
Yeah, and it's awesome to see that kind of support, because I feel like maybe 10, 15 years ago, we weren't in that same place. Like, oh my God, you didn't reach uh, that accomplishment, you're a failure, you're this, you're that. And again, it kind of goes with that body positivity stuff that's been making waves the last couple of years. And it's great to see uh, people support each other as strongly as they do, especially in your line of what you're passionate for. Um, I wish there was a lot more of this, especially in schools. I feel like high schools are rough for kids. Um, I remember one time I went to a high school football game, and the losing team was walking off the field, and some parent threw a beer bottle at this kid's helmet and was just pissed that they lost. And I mean, I hope that kid wasn't like mentally scarred after that whole thing happened, but I wish there was more of this support. Maybe I'm just not seeing it as much, but it's definitely cool to see that you get as much support as you do, because I do obviously follow you on Instagram and all the stuff that you post. And it's really cool to see the community of people that welcome you with open arms.
Yeah, I try not to let like social media get to me. I try not to let it become like a job. Yeah,
Right.
I definitely don't want to be an influencer. I personally think social media is exhausting, but
Right.
that's one thing. You just got to learn when to take breaks from that as well. So that's kind of what I've been doing lately. Like I still have my little moments, but I just that's just one thing. Like the community, yeah, it's great, but the people in real life, that's what matters to me. But there's also a catch there too, because sometimes your biggest supporters are strangers. So, and I have a lot of strangers that support me. So it is, at the end of the day, regardless, it's still great to see that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's so true, because I feel most of the people that you're close with or very well don't support you, or just don't give you as much love as you would like them to. I can't even begin to tell you, like, before I did this mental health podcast, I was really passionate about the wrestling community and did a wrestling podcast. And I had a whole big setup. I had a desk, I had my titles sitting in the back of it, just the whole get up. And
Hmm.
I remember it getting to a point where none of my friends were sharing the podcast, or just like even supporting it. And obviously, this is well before I was in therapy. So I was always in my head, I'm like, man, maybe I do suck at what I'm doing. Maybe my passion isn't worth a damn. And it took a recording session while my mom was fighting with her at the time fiance in the middle of me recording. So I listened back to it. I cringe every time I listen to it, because you can hear them clear as day yell while I'm sitting there talking about wrestling. And there was a lot of people that I networked with that I still talk to about wrestling and stuff. But yeah, it's really hard. Social media is an absolute plague. I think there's a lot of positive seen in social media, but I also, like you said, only the people in real life that actually support you, that actually go to bat for you, matter. Because at the end of the day, if social media shuts down tomorrow, what do we have? You know what I mean? And
I
I
say
feel
that all the time.
and I feel there's so many people on social media that just live behind a persona and just have no concept of reality. Like you see some of these kids that'll go on an MMA post and just, run down this fighter, and they're like, oh my God, this guy sucks, blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, it's some 16, 17-year-old kid on a keyboard who, just isn't applying himself and just shitting on everybody else because of that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to be your biggest fan, because there's always going to be people out there that try and drag you.
Facts.
And even though you might have a great support system, you still have to be your best support system, because there are going to be times where no one claps for you. And that's what I always tell myself. Like, and you hear and read that all over the internet. So it's not like I'm saying something new, but it's like, you be your biggest fan. because if you go based off of how other people feel about you, you will never reach your full potential. So I just
Absolutely.
constantly tell myself, I need to be better than I was yesterday. I'm going to keep doing this, because if I don't, it doesn't sit right with me. So even though I may be doing something on social, if I'm not doing the work outside of that, I'm failing myself.
Right. And I feel a lot of people don't even want to try and chase their true potential because, they're caught up in social media, they're caught up in whatever misery they're living through. And, like you said, that if you don't clap for others, um, it's never going to be your turn. I always try to support everybody I can, because I know what it was like to not have that support in return. So
Mhm.
anytime that I see you post, or I see the therapist that I interviewed a couple of sessions ago, I always try to share everything people post, because that's the positive side of social media. I feel there's so much information, there's so much that needs to be said, that some people will be like, holy shit, I really needed to hear that. Like,
Mhm.
I remember when I first started when I first made the mental health group, I didn't have a goal in mind. It was just kind of I wanted to create a space for other people to not feel the way that they're feeling. And it started out with me just basically, I guess word vomiting is the right word, because that's what it was at the time. It was pre-therapy, Chris. So it was, um, I spent 3 hours on the very first post that I put in there. I wanted to make sure I had all the details and everything. And as soon as I posted it, it got a lot of reaction. It was just like, wow, I really needed to read this, because I thought I was the only one who was dealing with a narcissistic mother. And, obviously it grew to what it grew to now. And it's you always got to support people that you care about, and there's nothing wrong with supporting complete strangers either. There's so many people that just need to hear that somebody's thinking about them, that just needs to hear that you're being seen. And that's one of the things I struggled with, was not being seen. I felt invisible forever, and I never felt like I mattered. And while what I'm doing now is great, and I'm super grateful for the opportunities I'm being given, there's a lot of struggling there too, because they're, like you said, strangers are your biggest supporters, and it's so true.
Yeah, it can kind of mess with you too, though, because then it's like, well, because you have these people in your life, and then you have the strangers, and then some people in your life that don't support you, and it's kind of like, well, I have all of these people supporting me, and it can kind of hurt your feelings. So it's everything. I feel like everything has a catch-22 to it. You have to mentally talk yourself out of all of these things, because
Right.
you'll fall into a hole if you let it.
Yeah. And I feel the most important part is balance. Balance and moderation. If you could balance out the chirping behind social media, and balance out the support that you get in real life from people, and be able to differentiate, like, hey, while I don't have people physically here, I have people that are on social media that are supporting me in the journey that I'm doing. So I feel balance is one of the most important things anybody can do with whatever they're doing, whatever they're passionate about, whatever line of work they're part of.
Yep, healthy balance.
So I feel this is something I don't ask too often in my recording sessions, just because we usually have a specific topic that we're always talking about. But just to kind of dig a little more into, I guess, what you do for yourself mentally. What kind of coping tools do you use to get through your day-to-day struggles, and do you practice a lot of self-care?
Oh yeah. So I work from home. I'm a homebody. I'm always home. If I'm not at the gym or I'm not doing a shoot, I'm always at home. I talk to myself a lot. I talk out loud to myself a lot. If I'm about anything, especially if I'm feeling down or if something's like bothering me, I'll kind of talk out loud and say, okay, well, why? Well, and kind of just pick it apart. Um, I feel like every day is self-care. You know, if I don't, the gym is my self-care. That's like, if I don't make it there, if I don't get there, that's like the key thing that will throw me off altogether. Like I said, it's kind of like my daily medication. So that's my self-care. I like to just, I love the beach. That's another thing, just to kind of be still and just
Right.
feel the sun on my face. I go outside at least like 6 times a day because I don't get any natural lighting in the house I live. It's very small, but I don't get a lot of light. So I'll just go outside with my dog, just sit in the sun and just feel it on my face. It's just, it might sound weird, but it really is rejuvenating. Like it makes me feel more awake. It makes me feel a little bit more refreshed. Like I feel like getting outside is very underrated. Like
Agreed.
people need to get outside more.
Yeah, and I feel the pandemic was something that uh it was rough for a lot of people because we were inside. We weren't allowed to go anywhere. We weren't allowed to do anything for like what, like a year before Florida started quote unquote opening back up.
Hmm.
The beaches and stuff were closed, and man, I could tell you during the pandemic for me was brutal because when I lost Amy at the very beginning of the pandemic, and I think she passed away right before I started therapy. Yeah, I think so, like a couple months before I started therapy. Um, and then Santi passed away 2 years ago, and that pandemic just, you're in that mentality. It's like, well, shit, I'm just gonna sit home because I work from home and just sit there and muster in my thoughts and just sit there and stir. It's just like, well, shit, what am I doing with my life? And the cost of everything is going up, so I'm just going to sit at home and not spend money. um, I agree, going outside is super underrated. For me, one of my biggest coping tools, and I think it's probably my number one, is going to see sunsets. And I know for the guys that listen in on this podcast might roll their eyes and just think, oh well, that's not normal for a guy to say, whatever. And there's that stigma there again.
Well, then they'll probably be single forever, and that's them problem. There's nothing
Right.
wrong with it. So
And I just feel every time that I'm out on the dock or every time I go to a beach and watch the sun go down, like you said, you get that sun in your face, you just feel that breeze. And there's something about an ocean breeze that just feels so welcoming when you're watching the sun go down, like when it's the hottest day in the summer. And, while Florida humidity sucks, but going out on the beach and watching the sun go down, for some reason, it's just so comforting for me to just watch the sun go down. I mean, the pictures I've gotten from sunsets are absolutely ridiculously incredible. Um, and I'm
I've seen a
forever,
lot of them on your story.
yeah. Um, and I live for that because not only do I enjoy seeing the sunsets, but the sunset was my one and only thing that I have left of Amy. Her and I shared the sunsets with each other while she was sick, and one of the last conversations her and I had was about going out on her brother's boat, and we were going to watch a sun go down. And then she passed away a week later. So that's, for me, I feel coping tools is something that you develop over time. I don't think you can be taught coping tools. I think it's just something that while you're in survival mode for so long, you have specific things that you cling to. Like movies and music for me were something for 90% of my life. And then, sunsets started just kind of blending themselves in there. As for the self-care part, I feel more people should practice self-care. And it doesn't always look the same, but I feel everybody could benefit from self-care, from putting themselves first and just taking care of themselves, whether it's mentally or physically.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just like, what do you enjoy doing? What makes you feel good? Like, do
Right.
more of that. That's really all of what that is. It's just find something that you enjoy, because I feel like we all have that. And you just have to really take that and own it. And
Right.
it could be anything. You could like to draw, you color, write, like whatever it looks like to you, just do it. Like, because I feel like society paints this picture of what things should be, and so we're like, oh well, if I don't have that, if I don't do it this way, then that's not having a hobby. That's because what am I going to get from it? So they
Right.
think just because they're not going to get something from it, not realizing they'll gain a lot from it from a mental standpoint. They'll feel more calm, but the way that society takes it and spins it, I think that's why we all struggle so much, because we're all worried about how someone else is doing it or saying it, or that's not done correctly or whatever. It's just learning to be your own person without being influenced by society. It's a hard thing to navigate.
Absolutely. Let me ask you something. So, I know you said that sometimes you talk things out to yourself and just try to figure out what you're going through and solutions and everything. Um, do you ever journal? Like, have you ever like journaled or anything?
So I used to journal, and I always tell myself I should get back to it. I have no excuse as to why I don't, because I have plenty of time in my day where I can dedicate 20 minutes to sit down and write something. I just don't.
Right.
But I feel like whether you talk it out loud or whether you say it out loud or if you write it down, um, I think writing it down is good because you always can go back to it. When you
Absolutely.
say it out loud, you can't really go back to it, but you can reflect on how you were feeling that day. But I do think it's also healthy to write. So I always tell myself I'm going to, so I'll take this as a sign.
Um, and there's something about journaling that just, I don't know, it hits a lot differently than a lot of the other coping tools that I've done over the years. Like the one exercise, I don't know if you heard me talk about it on previous podcasts that my therapist gave me. It's basically called the compassionate observer. Basically, what it is you talk in two perspectives. You talk from the negative emotion that you're feeling, and you write your thoughts in that voice, and then you reply to the compassionate observer, trying to understand why you're feeling this way and try and talk out those negative feelings. And for me, I I used to journal when I was like 14, 15 years old, when I was going through like some of the worst times in my life. And I'm grateful I've never found those journals because they were bad. But when I was given this exercise by Jess, I didn't understand the assignment when she first gave it to me. It's just kind of like, okay, am I schizo? Am I crazy for writing this stuff? And when I wrote my first session, I think it was about my mom, if I'm not mistaken, and I read it to my therapist, and she was blown away at the first one because I try to end every single journal entry with, I love you. I feel that is something that I needed to do with every journal entry that I put in there because I feel society as a whole is missing self-love. I feel so many people want the gratification of being loved and being wanted, but they don't love the person that they look at in the mirror every single day.
Right. Hmm.
Um, so if there was a specific topic in the mental health community you wish had more focus on, what would that be and how would you address it?
This one got me a little bit because I feel like there's so many, but for me, what it really came down to is abuse, manipulation. I feel like a lot of people, there's so much shame around that topic that, it goes back to being taken seriously and being heard and understood, and nobody wants to talk about it.
Right.
And I just feel like the more people are willing to share their story, all it takes is one person and then another person and then another. Um, but I'm not really sure how I would address it because it's, like I said, it's such a touchy subject, and it's really hard to bring people out of that shell to talk about because things run deep in a lot of people. They have a hard time bringing that up. So I think the only way to start is maybe by sharing my story, and letting that travel, see where it goes. I just, I've shared my story, with you and like certain people, but I haven't put it out there. I
Right.
just feel like I always kind of go with the flow of things. I go by how I feel, and I just feel like it's not my time yet to really say it openly to
Right.
the world, So definitely like more, I'm sorry?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was just saying, I would definitely like to see abuse being talked about more. That a lot of people don't realize how deep that travels and how far back it really does go.
Yeah, and the most I don't want to say fascinating. I think that's the wrong word. Um, I think the most interesting part when it comes to that conversation of abuse is when you see celebrities and when they have their platform and they talk about it, and like you said, the shame that uh, that they're met with from the community that they share it with, and it's super hard to share um, those experiences with people because it's just like uh, you know great example, the Rihanna Chris Brown thing. How many years have gone by and people are still, they don't believe Rihanna, or they trash Rihanna for it and say, oh, well, what did she do to deserve it? And I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've heard that sentence. And it goes with both genders, to be honest with you, because uh guys don't talk about it either, and it absolutely happens to them too. But just the conversation of abuse alone is super hard to talk about because not only are you met with, that internal shame, you're met with, questions that you don't feel comfortable answering. It's like, well, hey, I'm just trying to share my story in hopes to help people. And, it takes a special person to be willing, or not special, it takes a strong person to be willing to share their abuse story because it's it's so hard because you dig up memories you don't want to remember, and you don't
Hmm.
want to relive that moment of abuse. And I remember when I first started digging into therapy and just talking about my experiences with my parents. I never labeled it as abuse. I never knew it was considered abuse with all the things they were doing to me. And fast forward to now, and I could say I was mentally abused, that I was physically abused, and I try my best to talk about it and not make anybody uncomfortable. And I just feel sometimes you need to have those uncomfortable conversations with people. Be like, hey, like, I want to help you. You don't have to share every little piece, but we want to help you digest this whole thing. We want to help you heal. And I feel so many people are so closed off to the idea of healing because once they're finally out of that abusive cycle, it seems impossible to heal because you're constantly going back into the if I share kind of thing, XYZ might happen and might follow after.
Hmm. Yeah, a lot of people, it's just hard for some, like you said. A lot of people aren't willing to open up and share that. They don't want to. And everyone has their own way of coping. And that just goes back to self-work. You have to eventually at some point draw a line and say, okay, I want to help you and I'll be here when you're ready. But ultimately, it's got to come down to they got to want to help themselves too. And they have to, not everyone's going to be open to it. People have their own beliefs and things. A lot of people don't believe in therapy. A lot of people don't believe in talking about things at all. It just kind of boils down to that person and if they really want to help themselves or not.
I feel the toughest thing I've seen when it comes to abuse is when they have a parent or a grandparent that was abused, and if they talk about it, their grandparents like, oh, we don't talk about that kind of thing, like it's like a taboo subject. Um, and it's crazy to me that where we're at in society and we're talking about mental health, we're talking about that stuff, like you said, there's still a massive amount of people that don't talk about abuse. Like, yeah, sure, there's people that share their story, but I definitely don't feel like um, it's being talked about enough. And I don't know where one would start either, other than, I mean, the mental health group, I guess, is where I come in and have a private, safe space for somebody to share. I mean, thankfully, Facebook added that feature where you can anonymously share about something that you went through, and nobody other than the people that own the page knows who talked about whatever, because you might have like mutuals with each other. You might have friends that know this person that you're talking about and be like, oh, hey, I heard Chris was talking about you and saying all this stuff about you. And it's such a rabbit hole, and it's
Hmm.
so hard to talk about,
Yeah,
Um,
in a perfect world.
right. So I kind of asked what you think about therapy. What do you think about medication for one's mental health? Because I know that's another conversation that I feel isn't brought up enough. Like, do you think medication's good for people? Do you think it's just kind of a lazy way of helping somebody deal with their mental health? Like, what are your views on medication?
um, I think this is touchy too, because um, to each their own. But I personally don't believe in medication. I don't take anything. It it depends on the person, though. I mean, because I'm not in nobody else's shoes but my own. As the deeper we get into with mental illness like schizophrenia and things like that,
Yeah,
I can't really say there shouldn't be a handle on that, but I do think like most medications is just a way to make us sicker. It's just another way to kill people off.
hmm,
Because I've seen what it does to people. I've seen what it does to my mother. Um, I've seen what it does to some of my friends. It's just like if you take it for a very long time and then, oh my God, like God forbid you got to go without it for a whole week. It's like I've seen what it does to people. It's like a deep, dark downward spiral.
yeah, I 100%
I
agree.
just think it depends on the situation. Yeah, it depends on the situation and the person. Like I said, for my depression and anxiety, I feel like I'm very self-aware and I can kind of cope and deal with it myself. I don't feel like I need anything.
Right. For me, I kind of have that same perspective. Obviously there's levels to mental illness, and like schizophrenia, of course, I feel medication may be necessary, but I don't think that anybody dealing with mental health, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, the first session with with a therapist should not be, would you want to be taking medication? It should absolutely not start out like that. And I'm grateful I didn't give up on trying to seek out therapy, because that was one of my first experiences coming back to Florida. Was very first session with a therapist saying, "Oh, well, would you take medication for your depression?" And I said, "No, I don't feel that I need medication. I just need somebody to talk to." Her response, and this will never leave my brain for as long as I live, I don't think. Her response was, "Well, if you had high blood pressure, would you take medication for it?" I'm like, "Well, of course, it's for your health." And she gave me a look. She's like, "Well, this is for your mental health." And she just kind of gave me that look, and I just kind of like I doubted myself because of when she said that, and I'm like, I don't feel like I was that extreme. I was dealing with a mother who mentally abused me for 20 something years, and I don't think I need to take medication for that. My second session with her, She didn't write anything down both sessions. The second session, I had my first anxiety attack. I've never had an anxiety attack in my life, and things were just a complete shit show for me. Um, she stopped me mid sentence when I was venting, and she's like, "Oh well, that's enough. That's all the time we have for today." And she gave me a number um, to call, I guess, to book another therapy session or whatever. And I messaged her. I'm like, "Hey, I really need another session this Friday." And she's like, "Oh well, I'm booked up. Um, I'm booked up. Try another therapist." And that was the end of that. Um, Probably one of the worst experiences I've had with therapy, and I think that's why I'm like super against medication because like you said, I see what it does to people. My mom took Xanax uh, forever. And you could just tell all the medications and everything that she's taking has deteriorated her health. And you can just see it in her face now where she's not as self-aware as she was. And just it's crazy to me that there's so many doctors that just shove pills down your throat.
It's a big pharma. It's all a money scheme. I just, everyone's going to have their own beliefs on it, but that's just my belief on it. I just think it's just another way to make people sicker. Yeah, I'm just not a fan personally.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. It's definitely a subject that I feel many people like you and I agree on this, but there's also that group of people that are constantly at doctors, and the doctors be like, "Oh, well, if you take this pill, it's going to cancel out this, but then it's going to create 17 other problems that they don't tell you about." you know.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. It's never ending.
So the last question I had for you, what has consistent exercise and just like, the lifting and your fitness journey, what has that done for your mental health? Because obviously exercise is very beneficial to your mental health, like versus where you started to where you're now. What has it done for you?
And like I've said, that's my medication. And that
Right.
goes back to the last question, like, do I believe in meds? Like this is it. That's if I don't work out, I'm all thrown off. I feel very off kilter. My mood generally is more down than usual. It's done a lot. It's because you also meet people, it helps you connect with other people that are similar to you or that, are also going through things or whatever their reason is for being in the gym. But it's good to build that morale within yourself and to show yourself that if you can show up every day and do this, there's so many other things that you can show up to every day and accomplish. More people definitely need to exercise. I'm not one of those people that like, I'm going to shove it down your throat. If you want to do it, you want to do it. If you don't, you don't. But you will not regret it if you do it. It will be the most holistic thing you could ever do for yourself.
Right. For
It's just
me,
teaching me how to love myself better. Like if you want to feel good, move yourself. If it's just something you have to do for you.
right. You know, for me, growing up, being a bigger guy pretty much my whole life, trying to change up my diet and try to stay consistent. The hardest thing for me was consistency. Was there anything that I guess helped motivate you to stay consistent, like other than it now being a regular routine for you? Was there anything that you told yourself that kept you consistently going, that made you just want to stick with it?
Um, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of tricky because I've always been into the gym. I know it's just everybody's different. Um, but I've always been into it. So I'm not really sure what it is. I'm not really sure if like when my daughter had passed away, I got back into the gym and I just wanted to work on myself for myself and just find something to look forward to. I don't know. I think that's what keeps me going. Other people would just kind of lay down and give up. People would handle it in their own way. But for me, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I get up every day and I do it.
Right. I think
I really can't explain it.
right. I think this self-love comment, I think was probably the most important part of this was, our discussion earlier was just loving yourself. And I think that's one of the most important parts is taking care of yourself, not only mentally, but of course, physically. Um, I feel like the physicality part, a lot of people like myself struggle with because of, not seeing results as fast as you want to, or just, I guess,
It gets very discouraging. Yeah, a
yeah,
lot of people lose courage when they don't see, because a lot of people, they lack the patience to go through with it, and it's something that you have to do for a while. People start to notice your results within 4 to 6 weeks. So it's just something, it's a commitment you got to make to yourself. Maybe start taking pictures of yourself and then say, okay, can't wait to see what I look like in 2 months from now. Like
right.
just make up your own little thing to get you going.
Yeah, and I definitely something that I've been trying um, to work on myself because the biggest struggle I've had pretty much my whole life is self-love, and that comes from being bullied by parents and being bullied by people around me that I once considered friends, and um, recently, I think I started going to the gym again about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. And the first session I had with my therapist when I started going, she's like, I try not to focus on people's physical appearance because, obviously that's not what a therapist is there for. They're there to help you mentally and to help you, love yourself and talk you through all the stuff you're struggling with. And she's like, but you could definitely start to see a difference in your face. You can tell that you don't look the same as you did in our last session. And I feel in a society where social media is very strong and support, it's there. I feel I wish society just had more encouraging people in it, I guess. And I know that's unrealistic because everybody is their own person, but I just always feel like there's not enough people in this world that give a shit about each other.
Oh, definitely. I think that's why I don't really like to talk about religion and politics, stuff like that, because all this, if you look at it from the bigger picture, it's a way to just divide everybody. That's why people are too concerned about what somebody else is doing, because they need a way to divide people. They need a
Right.
way to continue to have the hate in the world. Because imagine what we could do if we really all were nice to each other and were motivating and uplifting, and we all stood together. Sounds really cheesy, I'm sure, but it's a real thing. It's a
Right.
true statement. We could do so much together versus if we allow these people to keep dividing us. I mean, you're going to have those people on there, but you're brave enough to put the work in. You're the one out here doing the work, sharing your journey with it. And then like you said earlier, there's people hiding behind screens. And that says a lot about who they are. You think they're waking up every day doing any self-work? Do you think they love themselves? No. But you get up every day and put the work in to love you. And that's all that matters.
Absolutely. So before the end of every podcast, I like to read a quote that I find on whatever subject that I happen to be talking about that session. Before I read mine, did you have any quotes that you live by that you wanted to share with our listeners?
It's pretty simple, but it's whatever makes you happy, do that.
And it's straight to the point too. I absolutely love it.
Mm. Yep.
Um, so I found a quote by a Miss Andrea Bolt, and I thought that it was very good considering the topic that you and I are talking about. So it reads, turn your demons into art, your shadow into a friend, your fear into fuel, your failures into teachers, your weaknesses into reasons to keep fighting. Don't waste your pain, recycle your heart. I thought,
Oh,
yeah, um, I feel I felt the last part probably harder than the rest of it because I wear my heart on my sleeve and it's really easy to hurt my feelings, I guess. And I think that's just because
me
of,
too.
yeah, I really feel that growing up the way that I did with the kind of parents that I had and not having a lot of friends, um, it gave me a perspective of the world of, I need to be who I didn't have growing up, and fortunately I have a big heart for everybody that I talk to. I talk to everybody like they're my best friend. I think the world of all my friends, and I try to support everybody doing whatever they're doing. And
I love that. I'm the same.
and I just feel if you don't put your heart into every friendship, then the friendship's not worth having. And sometimes you need to take your heart out of conversations that you have with the people you care about, because sometimes they need to hear the hard truth and they need to be held accountable. And um, sometimes the truth is really hard for a lot of people to hear.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Um,
There's actually this, I follow this lady, her name is Rupi Kaur, and she does poetry. And there's actually this one I wanted to read real quick if we have a moment. I don't know
Yeah.
if we're pressured for time.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
because you said, you wear your heart on your sleeve, and I do too. So it's, I don't know what living a balanced life feels like. When I am sad, I don't cry, I pour. When I am happy, I don't smile, I glow. When I am angry, I don't yell, I burn. The good thing about feeling in extremes is when I love, I give them wings, but perhaps that isn't such a good thing because they always tend to leave, and you should see me when my heart is broken. I don't grieve, I shatter. And I don't know why that resonated with me so much. It's just like you said, we have such big hearts and we have so much love to give to everybody. And when we feel rejected by that, it gets really discouraging. And I just think more people need to be like us. More people need to have bigger hearts. And like I said, understanding is the key. If we could all just understand where someone else is coming from, I feel like so much would change.
I just I want to say uh, that poem was incredible. That last
Yeah.
line really, really got me. Um, as soon as you read it, my jaw went on the ground. I'm like, holy hell. Um, you got to send me that one
Yeah.
after we get
I
done.
will definitely.
Um, yeah, I wish we had a society of understanding. We're getting there. We're getting there very slowly, but I definitely wish there was more
That's
people.
our purpose. We're the light workers. We just got to
Exactly.
stay on task,
Right.
stay on point, and what's meant for us will be there. And I think this is just a part of the process, is us meeting each other, networking, linking together, just to add to it, just to keep it going. It's
Yeah,
coming.
most definitely. So before I end today's podcast, I have two really big announcements. So the first one being the mental health group has finally hit 1,700 members. Um,
Yay.
pretty proud of that accomplishment. It grows every single day. I meet a lot of really incredible people. The second announcement I had, so on May 5th of this year, I am going to be on a NAMI platform to talk about men's mental health. Very excited for that. It's a very big opportunity for myself, and I will be talking about men's suicide. So stay tuned for that project. I'm very excited to share that with everybody. Ashley, thank you again so much for coming on this podcast with me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And for all my listeners, thank you again for your continuous support. Almost at 1,000 total plays on the podcast. So keep them coming. Share with your friends. Share with anybody that you feel needs to hear these podcasts, any of the subjects. Thank you again for my past guests for being on here. And thank you always to all the warriors that show support every single week. And as always, guys, be gentle with yourselves. And until next time, be well.